Welcome to Challenger Deep, athletes rising above adversity, where we explore stories of athletes who've faced their lowest points and risen to incredible heights. Did you know Challenger Deep is the lowest point in the ocean, making it the lowest point on Earth? When you're at your lowest, the beautiful truth is there's nowhere to go but up. We all face adversity, but how we choose to respond defines who we become. Join hosts Jeff Heggie and Tammy Matheny as we share powerful stories of everyday athletes' resilience, growth, and triumph. These stories will inspire you to rise above your challenges and reach new heights. Let's dive in.
All right. Hey, welcome back to Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have a world champion on with us today, Josh Frost, 2024 world champion bull rider. And I had the opportunity in 2022, I believe. He was on my other podcast, the Jeff Heggie Show, and we were talking about chasing that championship. And so I'm really excited to have him talk about some of the things that he's gone through in that journey. And he's had some amazing successes. And so we're looking forward to talk about that too. So Josh, welcome. Give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Like I said, I'm Josh Frost, and from Randelette, Utah, and said I'm the 2024 world champion bull rider. It's been a long road to get there. Been working it, I guess you'd say, been working at it since I was a little kid, but dang sure been a couple years of being really close to getting it, and had to just keep circling back and figuring out how to get better, and to end up getting there. There's nothing worse than, I mean, you take a lot of confidence from being close to achieving your goal, but it's one after not achieving it for 3 years in a row and being second. It dang sure makes you tests how bad you want it, because it gets real easy to get close to your goal and give up. And I didn't do that, but it took a lot of work to get there. So,
well, Josh, I want to dive into that because I think a lot of athletes we work with, they may fall short and they don't have the resiliency to keep bouncing back. Maybe they do physically, but mentally they just stop believing. Can you identify one or two things that really helped keep you resilient and you fighting for your dream?
And just right before we get into that, Josh, just for any of our listeners that don't know the full story, let's also talk about that, because it's not like Josh wasn't successful. I mean, he was having a great career, and he was runner-up to the world championship 3 years in a row. What have you won the Linderman 3 times? Is that right?
4.
And four, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very successful career, and right on the cusp. And then, yeah, so go ahead and talk. I just wanted to make sure our listeners understood what we were talking about there.
Well, and leading up to the world title, from winning second 3 years in a row, like when you talk about the resiliency, like I had to be I'd learned the resiliency from earlier in my career. I wasn't one of those guys that turned 18 and just went and made the NFR off of talent. It took, my rookie year was 2015, and it took me 5 years before I even made the NFR. And whereas on paper, that was the goal: turn 18, get your permit. And so, I'd been trying to even make the NFR for 4 years before I ever got there. Finally make it in 2019. That was the goal: go into the NFR and buck off all 10 bulls. Worst case scenario for an NFR. And so then it was like, what do you do at that point? I had seen that happen to guys in the past, and more often than not, they never make the NFR again. And so really had to be resilient there to say, hey, this isn't going to define my bull riding career, making it once and not riding a bull. And so we kept work, found confidence from other places, and made it the goal to get back to the NFR. And that was what was cool going back. I made it back in, came up short in 2020, but make the NFR in 21. And I went from bucking off all 10 bulls to going in there in 21 and riding 7 out of 10. And winning the average title at the NFR, and that was my first reserve world championship right there. Ended up second place. And that was, leading up to that, would say, you got to believe it. You talk about the mental resiliency and actually, the mind giving out before the body does. Like, the thing that really helped me with my confidence was in 2020, I struggled a lot that year, and I ended up 18th in the world. But August 10th, and for those, the PRCA season ends September 30th. August 10th of 2020, I was sitting 100th in the world. I mean, I wasn't even in the conversation for making the NFR. I'd been getting my butt kicked all summer, and stayed on like 3 of my last 45, and it clicked right there that day. And from August 10th to September 30th, I rode right at 70% of my bulls, and I went from 100th in the world to 18th, and came up short of the goal. But the cool part about that was the first time in my career that I'd ever rode at, that's world championship caliber. That's Sage Kimsey, Jose Vitor-Lemi. Like, the guys that are winning the world, they're riding 60 to 70% of their bulls all season. And when I did it for that 2-month period, I was like, okay, like, this isn't a fluke deal. This is the new Josh Frost. Like, I set that expectation to be a world champion and actually believed it. And since that 2 months of 2020, that's where my riding percentage has been, is that 60% plus. And so that's carried me through the 3 reserve world titles and all the things to get that gold buckle. But it's dang sure taken a lot of work and effort to get there.
There's nothing bad about that reserve world title. Those were some great years and stuff. But still, when you're trying to win the world championship, there's got to be some frustration there. So where was your mindset on after going through that 3 years in a row?
It was funny you say that, because I do take a lot of pride in winning second. Like, it's not first, but I had 3 really good years. I made a pile of money all 3 of those years. Like I said, I was first place at the NFR in 21. The 21, 22, 23, I'd been first, second, and third at the specific NFR. So, like, riding bulls great at the finals and just coming up short of that end goal. But the cool part was, I feel like I learned something from each NFR and each challenge. Like, it's never the same, but learning how to use those prior experiences to learn from them to have more success. And that's something that every year after the finals, I have a mental coach I work with. Like, we'd go through and write down the goals. And before the NFR, I had my goals. And then after the finals, we'd go through and check off how we've done and the things we want to do different next year. And it was the biggest thing I'd learned was after the 2023 NFR. And this is something I struggled with at all 3 prior to that, was there was always somebody I was chasing. In 21, it was Sage Kimsey. Sage Kimsey was the guy you had to beat. In 22, it was Stetson Wright. In 23, it was Stetson Wright again. Well, we roll into the NFR, first round of the NFR, Stetson tears his hamstring in half. He's out. Now, all of a sudden, it's anybody's game. And I was so caught off guard that the guy that I'd been, I got so caught up in trying to beat Stetson that when he disappeared from the race, it took me 4 rounds to remember how to stay on a bull. Ty Hamilton, he didn't miss a beat. He went to riding them suckers, and by the 6th, 7th round, he's got us by 200, done 150,000 to where you couldn't even catch him. And I finished that NFR strong, ended up third in the average, still won a pile of money. But that was my big takeaway going into this NFR was, staying in my lane. And at the end of the day, I went in there to beat all 14 of the guys, not just one guy, and show up, and kind of went into it with I'm going to win first. I'm going to go in and treat it as 10-1 headers, just like I do during the regular season, and go and try to win first place every night. And it was kind of funny how much, it was so much easier for me to stay focused every night, because I knew that was the game plan going in there. 10-1 headers, don't worry about the average, don't worry about the world championship. And if we can stay focused and show up every night, when the 10 days is over, we're going to have both of those titles. And whereas in the past couple years, looking at the bigger picture, it gets easy to start storylining in your head or thinking about stuff that pulls you out of that zone of, at the end of the day, you've got to show up and ride that bull. And, that was the big difference this year. Was I still bucked off 3 out of 7 or 3 out of 10, but it wasn't anything, that's bull riding. Like shooting at 70% at the NFR on the Rankest Bulls is pretty good. And it was cool to see the game plan come together, but from a mental standpoint, that was what flipped the switch from the years that I was second. And this year was just, I was staying in my lane, being the best that Josh Frost could be. What them other guys were doing didn't affect my performance whatsoever.
This episode of Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity podcast is brought to you by doTERRA, the world's leader in essential oils and wellness products. Ready to fuel your health and recovery like a pro? Listeners of this podcast can get 25% off doTERRA products and supplements. Head to www.confidentathleteprogram.com/doTERRA and start your journey to peak performance today. I love that, in hearing you speak of that. Here you are, world champion, and the importance of staying focused on you and not the other things that you can't control, which I imagine is very vital when you're on a bull, because there are a lot of things outside your control. Are there any particular exercises or strategies you do to help you just stay in that moment?
Probably and it comes with a lot of training. Obviously, the things you think about are the most important part of an athlete, from the positive self-talk to how you word stuff. That's something that I really learned how to do, probably prior to even this year, is, think positive, or if I was having negative thoughts, replace them with positive thoughts. But the pre-ride stuff is the things, the things that are going through your head close to performance, I feel like, is when it really comes. Them are the things that can just, if your peak performance state is, at a 6, those are the things that just take you away from it a tiny bit. And learning how to control those thoughts. And that was the big deal this year, was we called them car facts. That you can't change the facts. That's just what they are. We've still got to do our job. And so as those, the big one at the NFRs that I've struggled with in the past is the night we buck the eliminators, more often than not, they're not going to ride very many. And so that's something that would always start going through my head, like, hey, if I can ride this bull, I'm going to win a bunch of money. Or that starts creeping in there. And I knew that going into that round, hey, car fact, they're probably not going to ride very many bulls. Who cares? I still got to ride my bull. And through the course of, that was kind of my go-to this year, of the things that I can't control. Them are facts. I can't control how I show up and ride my bull. And it was pretty effective.
I love that, because that's so much of what we talk about in the Confident Athlete program on, how you've got to be prepared and how you've got to stay in the moment and stuff. Riding bulls is different than any sport, obviously. And so you can prepare yourself for that. But say you've got the rank pen and you've got a bull that he spins right every time, and then he comes out and goes left on you. I mean, I know my dad for I don't know how many years has said Josh is going to win it because no one tries harder than Josh. Well, what happens in that mindset when something goes wrong? I mean, you're halfway off and you've got to make it to 8. And more often than not, Josh does. So how does that mindset change when it comes down to just that extra try to make sure you're riding that?
It's kind of one of those ones, like, one of the skills I have in my arsenal. That was the one thing I learned growing up, was you can always control your effort. That was also part of the reason there's a difference between trying to ride a bull and trying to hang on to a bull. Hence effort with technique compared to just effort of gritting and holding on. And so that's something I've kind of had to, part of what changed my riding from those years I didn't make the NFR and always seemed to get hurt, to the years being at the NFR and then being in a world championship deal, is learning how to harness that effort into trying really hard while still using technique to help you get there. And you kind of hit on it. That's what makes bull riding so hard from a mental standpoint, is like 9 times out of 10 the bull goes left, you get on him at the NFR and he goes right. And that's where, like, some guys do the deal where they don't want to know about the bull, so it's all reaction. I'm a little more analytical, and I feel like it does help. Every other sport, they're watching game film, and so my goal is to be able to study the bull, see how he moves, see how he bucks, and then use that information to help me. But I'm still competing from a point that's a little bit reactive, to where I'm going to leave the chute in a position that if that bull does go the other direction, I'm there to pick him up. And that's when I talk about, when I'm locked in, it don't matter which direction they go. I'm just right. It's just ride the next jump, and that's the place you want to get to every single time. Very hard to do, but that's part of the challenge of it, and why I love riding bulls. Is it's don't matter how good you are, the goal is to never get bucked off, but that's a very unrealistic goal.
Well, from someone that's never ridden a bull, this is extremely impressive to me. But I want to dive back into that, because I agree with you. Second place isn't anything to sneeze at. You obviously worked really hard to earn that for, what was it, the 3 consecutive years. And you've spoken a lot to your self-talk. But again, I see so many athletes where, uh-oh, here we go again. Or let's not repeat what happened last year, or just kind of having that doubt in the back of your mind. And I think that's a block that so many athletes have, whatever sport it is. So how did you overcome that block? How did you get past that story that had been created the 3 consecutive years?
It was, they talk about, like, you got to see yourself as the world champ before you can achieve it. And it was one, even though I won second 3 years in a row, like, it was very easy for me to verbalize and talk about it, because I knew I was going to be the world champion. It was only and I even through the 3 second places, like, I took a lot of confidence from all 3 of them. And it was very easy to see I knew my weaknesses. And, part of the reason I had won second was during the regular season. I went into each of those first 3 NFRs at a relatively large deficit, in a position that it didn't matter how good I did at the NFR. I needed the guy in front of me to mess up. And really the only year that I would say I stubbed my toe was the year and that was when I maybe put too much thought into, hey, I need to beat Stetson Wright. Instead, I need to be the best that Josh Frost can be. But I'd done a really good job of having that belief that I was going to be a world champion. And that was one, I got that question a lot this year after I won it. Everybody was like, has it sank in yet? Has it sank in yet? And for me, like, it was very much one that, and I don't know if it was because I'd been so close for 3 years, but like, when I hit the ground on that 10th bull and I knew I'd won it, like, there was no, hey, it's got to sink in. It was like, I felt like I'd been the world champion my whole life. And now it was just certified by them handing me that buckle, I guess. And I think when you talk about people struggling with it, like, part of it is, like, you've got to verbalize it and say it. And that was something I started doing in, 2021, like, before. And at first it did feel like it borderline felt like I was lying to myself, or I was scared, because you got to have some confidence to walk up there in front of your peers and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a world champion. Like, I'm going to win it. Just like, look out, guys, just so you know, like, I'm going to. And for me, like, it comes from a place of confidence, not a place of being cocky. Like, and the more I said it, the more I started feeling it. And then my actions reinforced it the more, and to where, like, even though I didn't have that buckle yet, I was doing the things that world champions do to help make it come true. And 4 years later, it did.
So were you verbalizing this out loud, or you're saying verbalizing to yourself?
Verbalize it to myself, and, like, if you get the, like, I'm not just walking down the street saying, hey, I'm going to be the world champion, but like, in interviews and stuff, like I was very confident at saying I'm going to be a world champion, or my goal is to be the world champion this year. That's why I'm here. Me winning this rodeo is helping me get to that goal. Like I had the goal and I said it and knew how I was getting there and wasn't afraid to tell people about it when they asked.
With that mindset and with that whole attitude, how important is it in your mind on who you surround yourself with? Being around Kai and Stetson and, other people that have that same mindset. So how important is that in that being able to have that mindset yourself?
Oh, it's a big factor. That was the big thing that helped me in 21 was I got a rodeo with Sage Kimsey, and it was cool because he actually asked me to rodeo with him. Like, I knew who Sage was, but I wouldn't say we were friends. But he seen what I was. See, he'd won the world 6 times in a row. Stetson Wright beats him in 2020. Well, Sage was hungry, wanting to come back for his 7th world title, and that he needed somebody that was going to push him. Obviously, everybody wants to rodeo with Sage because he's a 6-time world champ, but the waves I was making at the start of 2020, like, he could tell that he needed something from me and I needed something from him. And I was hungry, ready to go for, I was entering anything and everything, riding bulls. I think I was winning the world at that point in time in March when he called me. And so I got to hop in with him. And that was really cool being, makes, like you said, when you're around people, but being a world title wasn't a big deal to Sage. He'd won 6 of them. And then after you're in the vehicle with him, you're like, man, he's just a regular guy. But like that was his mindset, like the ability to, it's as simple as put your mind to it and go and do it. Like, then that was the way Sage was. Like, I'm going to be the world champion bull rider. I can ride any bull in the world. And we showed up every rodeo, every day with that attitude. And that was something he'd helped me with a lot, was the mindset towards the bulls. It gets real easy to start giving, I call it giving power to the bull, or backstory in the bull, or, oh, I got this bull. And one day Sage looks at me and he goes, you know what your problem is? I said, what? He goes, you think all these bulls are way ranker than they are. Every time somebody asks you, oh, I got a bucker, like, there's maybe 1 or 2 bulls in the world that even buck that hard. The rest of them are just easy. And it was like, I flipped that switch that day. And bull riding really is that simple. The way you ride a high school jump kicker, it's the same technique on the rankest bulls in the world. But you start giving those ranked bulls any bit of mental energy, of power, or a lot of, they'll make you look stupid really quick. But when you climb over with that, I'm going to do this, and I don't care what your history is, watch out. I started riding a lot ranker bulls.
I love that lesson, again, for anything in life, not just all sports. But you're right. Often we give credit to our opponent in life instead of just staying focused on us and not having that negative narrative of what we're going against. I thank you for sharing that, because I know that can benefit a lot of our listeners here.
Oh, but I rodeoed, so I understand the rodeo world. And we've had in the book, we've got Tyson Durfee and Amberly Snyder. We've talked to them. I've had Will Loomis on my podcast. I know the rodeo world, and I know how important that whole mindset is. Wendy Wynn, she's the one that introduced you and I. She's probably got the best mindset in the world, right? And she's got an awesome mindset. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize too is there is, going back to what we talk about in the book of overcoming adversity, with all these successes, there's adversity all the time, and especially in the world of rodeo, because you're not just dealing with getting bucked off and then you've got another bull that afternoon in a different rodeo or whatever it might be, but you've got injuries to deal with too. And maybe you want to, I know Tammy's doing a lot of work on injured athletes and stuff, and a future book. So how do you deal with the adversity of injuries and overcoming them? I'm sure you've rode some of the rankest bulls in the world with injuries that most athletes would be out for 6 months.
Well, that's I don't know if we'd hit on it yet, but that was I don't got my sling on right now, but I'm recovering from shoulder surgery right now. I'd that was kind of the crazy story of this year. So last, I was reserve world champion 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. But every year after the finals, man, we hit the season running. Like January hit, and I'm winning everything. Super motivated, gonna win the world. That happened after 21. Same thing, 22 hits, end up second. We're running. Well, 23 hits, reserve world champion, and I go to try to take off for be the 2024 world champion. Well, back's hurting. My back hurt for 2-3 years, but whenever I'd warm up, it'd quit hurting. Well, I'm riding in January, and like I'm climbing over the chute, and my legs going numb, and I'm bucking off all these bulls at 5-6 seconds. Like I'm starting them good, and then I just feel like I lose power in my legs. And so after I've rode 3 out of 25 in the month of January, I'm like, okay, like I've been a 70% bull rider for 3 years, and at this point, I think something's wrong. So I finally go to them. Like I said, I'm having back pain and nervy stuff. Well, I go get it checked out. Turns out I got a herniated disc that's hitting a nerve. And so that kind of threw a whole twist to the start of my 2024 season. Worked through that all of February, March, got back. I took 30 days off, did a bunch of physical therapy, did some injections, and found all sorts of stuff to make the back feel better. Well, we take off in March, start riding bulls good again, getting on the board, having the best summer of my life, the huge 4th of July, take the lead. I'm back to #1 in the world after not winning any money this winter. And then August, hang up really bad to a bull in New Jersey, tear my rotator cuff and labrum in the left shoulder to the point that every time it's my riding arm, so it didn't hurt. I went to the doctor. He told me I needed surgery. I was like, well, if it don't hurt, can I still ride? And he's like, his advice was I wouldn't get on any bulls till the NFR. After the NFR, you need surgery. He followed sports med doctor. He understood the deal. I'm like, well, if it don't bother me, can I still ride a few? And so I went to a couple of events after that, shoulder dislocated several times. And I'm like, okay, like, and it was at this point that I really looked at the world standings and realized, okay, like, it don't matter if I come in 1st or 4th, it's going to be whoever rides the best in Vegas is going to be the world champion. And so I quit going middle of August. I get passed in the world standings, but I hit on it earlier. They were 30,000 in front of me, not 150,000. And that was the big deal. I knew that even if I would have dropped the 10th, I was going to be in dang sure striking distance of 1st place. And so that was when it came down to how do we get this shoulder feeling as good as possible to get me through 10 bulls in Vegas without it dislocating more, getting hurt worse. And so physical therapy and got some stem cells in it, did anything and everything I could. And I got it feeling good enough. I ended up getting on probably 14 practice bulls. Normally I'll get on 30 to 40 bulls in the month of October, November, but it really changed my practice schedule to a lot more time on the barrel doing drills and a little bit more work smarter, not harder. And it was kind of cool to see how that paid off. But that was I was borderline not even the favorite going into the NFR because everybody knew about the shoulder issue, but I was very confident that I could get through 10 bulls with it. And we did dislocated on the 8th bull. I hung up a little bit, but finished the finals off, world champion, and I got surgery 5 days later. So
the year you win is the year you're doing this with the torn rotator labrum, dislocated after having herniated disc. Do I have all that right?
yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, and again, it's and I've had my share. We can talk shoulder surgeries later. I've been through 4 of them, so I understand that. But I think about how many times someone's injured, and it's almost like an excuse. Well, I had a good run, but I can't do this. You've already spoken to. You obviously have a very strong mindset. But how are you able to like put that in the back of your mind and I'm going 100% with what I have right now? Because I think that's really a thing that really sets the champions from the also runs.
Well, and it's I gotta say, it's the human body's amazing, and that's the like. There's a way around everything. Like, and I did end up having to get surgery, but there are lots of, if you're close to a championship, and there's a little bit of being smart too. Like, if you are actually injured and it's affecting your performance, there's nothing wrong with getting it fixed, but you can, through the course of hard work, like, and that was my back deal. Like, first doctor I go to, he's like, oh yeah, we got to, you either get your back fused and you're done riding bulls. And I'm like, okay, like, I think there's maybe some other options we could try. Like, this is kind of my career. Like, I'm not that old, lotta. And sure enough, through the course of, alternative therapies, physical therapy, getting flexibility, stretching, like, I still get some back pains, but I'm the world championship bull rider. And if I would have listened to that doctor in February, I probably would have just had back surgery. And it's like and that's, like I said, you can do anything with your body. It's just a matter of figuring out how to work around it and take care of it. And that's the other, like, get the help. There's I'm not saying that you should ignore your doctor, but if people are telling you stuff that don't align with where you're going, find somebody that does believe in you. And that was the second doctor I went to. He said, would never tell you, he said, at this point, have faith. Crazy stuff can happen. I believe it if you believe it. And so we worked with it, and sure enough, the old back got feeling better. So.
Well, Josh, this has been awesome. There's so much that we can get out of this. And I guess one more thing that I'd like to ask you, and I'm sure you do get asked this a lot, you've obviously got a lot of young athletes, young cowboys, whether it's bull riders or other events or other sports altogether, looking up to you and looking at what you've accomplished and all that. What advice would you give young athletes that are, I want to grow up to be a world champion? What advice would you give?
I've got lots of it. Specifically speaking to young athletes, and me and my brother do a lot of bull riding schools. Like, set your goals high. Like, when you say you want to be a world, like, go and do it. When you turn 18, you can be a world champion, and that's what we're in any. Primarily speak to rodeo kids right now, but set that your goal. And, like, from the time, that's what separates. You hear it. Example: Sage Kimsey, John Crimber, Jess Lockwood. Here's your phenoms that from the time when they were 18 years old, they believed they could be a world champion. And so when they were 14, 15, 16, they were training to be a world champion. When I was 14, 15, 16, I wasn't training to be a world champion. Like, I didn't believe it. And that's part of it. Like, set the goal, believe it, and go and achieve it. Don't just say, I want to be a professional. Like, set the standard. And that's what I've noticed with the people that turn 18 and 19 and just go and take the world by storm. They're not testing the waters. From the time they were old enough to have a dream, they believed that's where they were going to go. And so they set themselves up for that. That being said, everybody's path to success is different. Don't, just because you're 18, 19 and you're not doing what the best guy in the world is, that don't mean you can get there. You can't get there. And that's something that I dealt with a lot from, wasn't say that I was a hot shot at 18, but, like, my older brother was Joe Frost. He'd made the NFR. So there was kind of this expectation that, my rookie year, I'm going to go win the rookie, and I'll be dang if I'm 23 before I make the NFR. And it was like, at that point, it was really easy to start feeling that the jealousy. You're like, oh, these 18, 19, I'm starting to get beat by kids that are 4 years younger than me. And there's two ways to look at that. You can start considering what they're doing, or I was just like, holy cow, like, I need to get better. These kids are kicking my butt. And so I worked harder and made my first, I was 24 when I made my first NFR. And so that's the important deal. Like, everyone's path to success is different. And so if you know where you want to go, like, set that goal big and go and get it. And just because you don't get it the first year you try, just recycle it and use it again. Take what worked for that season and keep using it. And there's going to be those weaknesses in there, and you need to break them down and figure out how to make those weaknesses your strengths, whether it's from a bull riding point of view, like your weak, in probably most sports, like you probably got some technical weaknesses. Like, don't be afraid to look in on yourself and find the weaknesses and make them better, and get help. It's really easy in rodeo to try to do everything by yourself, because that's kind of been the mentality forever. But that was the biggest thing that took me to the next level, was technical help, physical help. I have a trainer, I have a mental coach, read the books. Like, there's thousands of resources out there, and don't be too prideful to ask for help, because when you got an outside eye looking in, it's going to speed things up a lot quicker than you pound your head off the wall 20 times in a row before you figure out what you're doing wrong.
Well, Josh, I have been fascinated by your story. I have never followed rodeo until Jeff became my colleague, so I'm new to it, but I would love to follow you, and I know listeners would like to keep up with your journey. What's the best way we can do that?
Most active on Instagram. I think it's Josh Frost 16. Follow me there. I also have a website that stays up to date. It's thejoshfrost.com. Follow me on Instagram. Check out the website, and like I said, I'm pretty active on social media. Keep you going on with my rides and what I got going on day to day. So.
All right. Well, you have a new follower here. I appreciate you being on and sharing all your lessons, and I know they're going to help those young athletes out there.
Perfect. And I'll just give you one more second, Josh. I know in the rodeo world, sponsors are important, and I know there's going to be a lot of people. Okay, how's he related to Lane Frost? So talk about your sponsors and also that relationship.
Got several sponsors keep me down the road. Wrangler, number one. Been wearing Wrangler since I was 6 years old, and proud to have them on my shirt. Just started working with Cal Ranch, Coastal Farm and Feeds. We're pretty excited about that one. And then another cool one, you kind of hit on it, Lane Frost brand. Lane's actually my second cousin. His dad and my grandpa were brothers, so that's kind of the relation there. But we are related. He was the great bull rider. Kind of runs in the blood, I guess, if you're a Frost. And so it's pretty cool.
Well, thanks, Josh. We really appreciate that. And for our listeners, like I mentioned in our book, Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity, we've got more rodeo stories in there. So love for you to check that out. You can get your free copy at jeffheggie.com/free book, and you can get that. But thank you, Josh. We really appreciate you taking the time. And again, congratulations on the World Championship. We look forward to many more.
Thanks, Jeff. It was great talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. We hope these stories inspire and equip you to tackle life's challenges head on. Don't forget to visit www.confidentathleteprogram.com/Challenger Deep to get all of our free resources from the book, your copy of our book, and access to 2 free weeks of the Confident Athlete Program. Remember, in life, adversity only visits the strong. It stays forever with the weak. Let's rise above together. See you next time.
Well, you've put in the mental work, and I think it's important for athletes. I love that you say you work with a mental game coach, because I think too many think they can do it on their own. But to hear a champion say that, why not? Why not do that and better yourself in every capacity? So I really like that you plugged that.
It just blows my mind which it's very not common in the rodeo world. I think in other sports you see it more, but like I said, I've been working with her I talk to her once a week and have for the last 3 years, and it's the best money I've ever spent. Like, you talk about a return on investment. Like, I talk to her and then I go and ride the bull off of the stuff we talked about. And it's pretty flawless, and more people need, like I said, but everybody tries to do it on their own. It's like, I probably could have figured it out on my own, but it probably would have took me 5 more years to do it. So,
And you know, to me, the mental game changes your entire life, not just you know, the sport you're playing, but you start to see you think better in general, probably.
oh yeah,
That's a lot of lessons, though. I mean, he basically every lesson we could possibly pull out of that book. I thought of Jordan's when he was like, "Wasn't focus when I didn't focus on them, and I focused on being the best I could."
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there were so many. I kept thinking that story relates. That story relates. So
And I loved how he tied into so many of the same things that Tanner talked about, setting your goals big and don't settle and